I have actually been wanting, well, for Chase, I would say actually, he'll get the joke. But I've been wanting to talk about this case for quite a while, and I just haven't really sat down to do it. I kind of wish I would have, because talking about it now in today's 2026 climate may not be the wisest idea for some viewers or listeners, but hopefully, if they enjoy the subject matter, they will bypass their political leanings and just enjoy the story. And that entire cold open probably really confused a lot of people. But have you heard about the Iranian UFO incident? Actually, it's called the Iran UFO incident from 1976. It's been a case that I have known about actually since I was a little kid, and I saw it on some TV show or documentary or something, and I've really been sort of obsessed with it ever since. It's one of the most interesting cases in all of ufology because it checks off a lot of the boxes for the skeptics out there, specifically a trained observer, which they are so famous for throwing out. This was clearly witnessed by a trained observer. And I know some folks out there will say, doesn't Iranian really count as a trained observer? Yes, an Iranian does. They are human beings just like the rest of us. So it doesn't mean their brain capacity is any lesser than we are, specifically if they're able to fly fighter jets. So they have to have some kind of brain capacity. So putting religious convictions aside, political convictions aside, let us sit back and talk about the 1976 Iran incident. Now, I found a picture online that sort of depicts what this UFO looked like that they experienced, and even the plane is not a good interpolation, and the UFO really isn't, because what they described was more of a diamond shaped UFO. And but it's a good enough visual to let everybody kind of get a picture of what we're going to talk about. So let us show you a little clip ever so briefly, and then I will come back and we will talk about it.
On September 19, 1976, Iranian Air Force radar detected a luminous object hovering over Tehran's airspace. Within minutes, two F-4 Phantom jets were scrambled to intercept the unknown craft. As the pilots closed in, both reported sudden loss of all communications and weapons control, systems that only returned when they broke off pursuit. Major Parviz Jafari, the lead pilot, described the object as intensely bright, shifting shape and performing maneuvers that defied known aerodynamics. Ground radar confirmed the craft's presence throughout the encounter. At one point, a smaller object reportedly detached from the main craft and accelerated toward the jets, forcing evasive action. According to declassified U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency records, multiple civilian and military witnesses observed the object from the ground. Official explanations ranged from equipment malfunction to atmospheric phenomena, but none fully accounted for the event. A lesser-known detail, Jafari later stated the object outmaneuvered his jet at speeds impossible for any aircraft of that era. So what was it? Nearly 50 years later, no explanation has been offered.
Well, there has been by Jafari. But the interesting point about that is You heard him say the U.S. military or government got involved with the investigation. And you might be thinking, well, that's kind of strange. We've been enemies of Iran for a very long time. And yeah, we have been. But until the Iranian hostage scandal in the late 70s, which is essentially when our departure of being allies with Iran ceased. Before that, we were allies, friends. We may have turned a blind eye to a lot of things the Shah of Iran was doing to his citizens, which is historically accurate. But we did that with sort of your typical political. He was giving us things that he wasn't giving other countries. So I'm sure that happens all the time. I'm sure we do that with countries. But in 1976, we were most definitely allies. So the Iranians had the United States government come in and help with the investigation after this incident took place. The interesting thing is for decades after Project Blue Book ended, the military and the US government insisted they didn't do any investigations. They didn't even acknowledge the possibility or the existence of UFOs to the point that they didn't even investigate it. So if they didn't, then why did the Iranians have them come in and help them investigate this case in 1976? And it is one of the more interesting cases in all of ufology because it had a dogfight in it of sorts. And I have other audio actually from General Jafari that's going to help us along the way because that clip didn't really tell the entire story of this case. Now, before I hand things over to General Jafari to talk about the incident, I just want to point out that in the middle of one of his interviews, there is an Iranian reconstruction, whether it was for Iranian TV or the Iranian military did this, isn't quite sure. But it's almost like TV production type of a reconstruction. So it leads me to think that it was Iranian TV that made this reconstruction because it's got sort of a 1970s sort of science fiction feel to it. And I muted a lot of the audio on it because I'm assuming most of us don't speak Iranian, so there's really no point in playing it anyways. But it makes a lot of interesting facts, so I thought I would just include it anyways.
Imagine when I was looking here at about 70 miles out and he jumps all of a sudden 10 degrees to my right. In this angle, 10 degrees, this part which it was traveling becomes about 26.7 miles per moment. I don't say per second, maybe less than a second.
Now, it's interesting because you hear that a lot from UFO witnesses that these objects make sharp 90-degree turns that are impossible for humans to do and survive. And most commonly, you heard that with this latest batch from 2017 with the Tic Tac and the Nimitz and all of those. So it wasn't just then that that sort of talked. People have been talking about UFOs doing that almost from the very beginning of modern ufology. And here we are listening to a general talk about his experience with it as you going to watch some of this UFO footage recreation from Iranian TV of the incident. And it depicts it pretty accurately because it was spotted on radar. He was actually the second jet that was sent up because the first jet went up and tried to engage with it. And as soon as it did, its instruments failed and it turned away. And as soon as it turned away, his instruments all came back. So we've heard that before as well about incidents or
All the
run-ins with UFOs and everything.
instruments were fluctuating with the garbles and the radio. So I was really frightened. So I decided to turn away. And I said, if it comes closer than about 4 miles, I will jump out.
با سرعت صوتم بهش نمیرسم. دستور چیه؟ چیکارش کنم؟
حال شما میتونید شاروخی هم بشینید، اما آخرین دستور اینه که بیاید تهران بشینید.
So you think the reason why they're not telling us is because they can't trust everyone?
They can't trust, and the second one, maybe as I said, they don't want people to be panicked.
That's kind of your standard answer at the very end. They always use they don't want the public to be panicked. But the basic premise of his story, and I have another clip of him talking that I'll play here in a minute. As I told you, the first jet got sent up and turned away when they sent General Jafari up to engage this craft. When he went up to face it, he engaged the craft, sort of dogged each other, for lack of a better phrase. And at one point, a smaller object broke off from the UFO that it was chasing and came at General Jafari's plane. And it was at this moment that he decided he was going to shoot at it because he didn't know if it was a missile or anything. The second he tried to lock on his weapons, everything in his instrument panel completely went black. And the only power he had was to control the ship. The second object sort of made a circle around his jet and returned quickly to the original UFO. At this point, he turned away, sort of circled away. He didn't quit the dogfight, but as soon as he turned away, all of his instruments came back on. So he circled back around to continue chasing this UFO, at which point it finally just shot away into space or wherever it went. Now, you may be thinking this is kind of a standard UFO movie script where they try to engage with the UFOs and their instruments go black and everything, but that's actually what happened. This has been public for almost, 50 years now, just about. So this actually happened, and there's filmmaker James Fox did a Freedom of Information Act FOIA request from the government and actually got the information that the U.S. government did go over and help the Iranians investigate this. So it is verified information that this did actually happen. Was it an alien spacecraft? Was it all of that? I mean, we don't know, but just listening to the eyewitness there talk about what he experienced, how his instruments went black, how it made a 90-degree turn, how a second object came off of it and circled around his jet, how the first fighter pilot experienced the exact same thing that he did with his instruments and everything. It leads a lot of credibility because, to my knowledge, we don't have that technology here in 2026. We certainly didn't have it 50 years ago in 1976. But let the man tell you more about this incident in his very own words.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Parviz Jafari, and I'm a retired general of Iranian Air Force. At about 11 p.m. on the evening of 18 September 1976, citizens were frightened by circling of an unknown object over Tehran, the capital city of Iran, at a low altitude. It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter. They reported it to the tower and was seen by Towerman 2.
Now, did you catch that? It wasn't just the citizens of Iran. It wasn't just these two fighter pilots. It was captured on radar, and it was also visually witnessed by members in the tower as well.
He alerted the Air Force Command Post, and Deputy General Yousefi decided to scramble an F-4 jet to investigate. The pilot in the first jet lost instrumentation and communication when he got too close to the brilliant object, so he headed back. About 10 minutes later, they scrambled a second jet, which I was piloting. At the time, I was a squadron commander. I approached the object, which was flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue. The light was so bright that I was not able to see its body. The sequence of flashes was extremely fast, like a strobe light. We locked on it with radar it was at 30 degrees left, at range of 25 miles. The size on the radar scope was comparable to that of a 707 tanker. 4 other objects with different shapes separated from the main one at different times during this close encounter.
Now, you heard him there. 4 other objects escaped, not just the singular one.
Whenever they were close to me, my weapons were jammed and my radio communications were garbled. One of the objects headed toward me. I thought it was a missile. I tried to launch a heat-seeker missile to it, but my missile panel went out. Another followed me when I was descending on the way back. One of the separated objects landed in an open area, radiating a high bright light in which the sands on the ground were visible.
Now, that's interesting because I remember in the documentary that I saw as a little kid, them talking about the U.S. government or the U.S. military going into Iran and helping them do sort of a investigation of this area where he said one of the smaller objects landed in the desert. And it was kind of reminiscent of the Lani Zamora case where they found these little indentations of where this thing landed. And that was really all that was ever said about the little smaller object landing in the desert.
We could hear emergency squash at all the way, which was reported by other airliners flying at the time and continued for another couple of days. During my interview at headquarters, after the incident, the American Lieutenant Colonel Alan Moy took notes, but after it was over, I could not find him to talk with. Later, once classified document was released here in America through the Freedom of Information Act, the Defense Intelligence Agency documented the event in a great detail, and it was sent to NSA, the White House, and the CIA. The DIA assessment said this case is a classic that meets all necessary conditions for a legitimate study of the UFO phenomena.
Which is great because, like I said earlier, for the longest time, the government insisted that they weren't in the UFO business from the moment they closed Project Blue Book. This was, 8 years after they closed Project Blue Book.
And I would be happy to answer questions and tell you more. Thank you.
Now, I know some of you out there that may not be into ufology probably think nothing about it. This is just another one of those cases. They probably didn't know or understand what they were seeing. But again, this is one of the most documented cases in all of ufology, and it checks off all the boxes. Qualified witnesses. You have visual sighting by these qualified witnesses. You have the militaries, not only of Iran, but of the United States getting involved and investigating, even though the U.S. claims they didn't at the time. It's clear that they did. So it checks off all the boxes. I mean, was it an alien spacecraft? We don't know, but it certainly wasn't anything that we had on this earth 50 years ago. At least nothing that we know of publicly. I'm not going down that conspiracy rabbit hole. But to me, this has always been one of the most fascinating cases because shortly after this incident is when the whole sort of disagreement between the United States and Iran began, and it's clearly still going on to this day. So to have this general come out publicly, and that was the press club from about 20 years ago. So for him to be able to come out and publicly, and from what I understand, it took a lot to get them, a lot of red tape to go through to get him into the United States I think it was 2004, something like that, for that press club briefing. They had to go through a lot of red tape to get him here in the United States to talk about it. So kudos to him for still talking about it. He didn't bring any world politics into it. He was willing to still talk about his incident with this UFO. So I believe him. And yes, of course, I believed it when I was a little kid and I was really starting to get into UFOs. I believed everything. I think if you watch or listen to this podcast at any point over the past 10 years, I believe a lot of it, but I also call out BS on a lot of things too, or I just simply don't buy a lot of things. I may say, with the caveat, I suppose it's possible. I did that last week with the Skinny Bob video, but I absolutely believe General Jafari. I think something happened in Iran in 1976. I think they had a dogfight with it. I think he saw one of the smaller objects land in the desert. I think the U.S. military and the Iranian military investigated it, and it all got buried for the longest time. So for people out there that say this is all just bunk, that it never happens, why would the government hide everything from us? There you have it. It's clear they do. Why they do it, I don't know why they do it. I don't necessarily buy the whole they don't want the populace to be scared. That could be part of it, I suppose. But I think it all boils down to getting the upper hand on higher technology. But hey, maybe you have different thoughts about this case. If you do, let me know in the comments. I really would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this podcast, as always, don't forget to click like and subscribe. As usual, I don't have a closer for this podcast, so I'll simply close with, I want to believe.